But back to politics. Former President Barack Obama campaigned for Vice President Kamala Harris for the first time last night. The former president headlined a rally in Pittsburgh where he criticized and relentlessly mocked Donald Trump.
There is absolutely no evidence that this man thinks about anybody but himself. I've said it before. Donald Trump is a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. You've got the tweets in all caps, the ranting and the raving about crazy conspiracy theories. You got the 2-hour speeches, word salad, just, it's like Fidel Castro. Just on and on. Constant attempts to sell you stuff. Who does that? Selling you gold sneakers and a $100,000 watch and most recently a Trump Bible. He wants you to buy the Word of God, Donald Trump edition. Got his name right there next to Matthew and Luke. Reason some people think, well, I don't know, I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good. Because it was my economy. We had 75 straight months of job growth that I handed over to him. It wasn't something he did. I had spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time. So just in case everybody has a hazy memory, he didn't do nothing except those big tax cuts. As I recall, Donald Trump was president for 4 years. And if rounding up and deporting millions of desperate people and building the beautiful wall and didn't matter whether some of those folks you rounded up were women and children. If that's the answer to everything, well, why didn't you solve the problem? Why were the number of immigrants basically the same when you left office as when you took office? I'll tell you why. Because he didn't have a real plan. He had talking points. He had concepts of a plan. And the plan was mean and ugly.
So, Gene Robinson, that's Barack Obama last night in Pittsburgh. State they have to win the Harris campaign. And people wondering how and when will they use the former president, Obama. And that's exactly where you want to use him, in the state of Pennsylvania. If the Harris campaign, that's how you want to use him, which is kind of free form, mocking Donald Trump, which he's done a lot. He did it, remember, in his convention speech back in Chicago, talking about those terrible sneakers, the Trump Bible, which, by the way, we learned this week is made in China, but we can talk about that later. How effective is Barack Obama, and how much do you expect to see the Harris campaign use him here in these last couple of weeks?
Well, the man can talk, right? I mean, he gives a great speech, and that was really it was entertaining, it was informative, and I think for Democrats in Pennsylvania, which is ground zero right now, it was inspiring. I mean, they need to get Democrats out to the polls, and who better to do that than Barack Obama? And I just cracked up when that was my economy, that line. But sort of reminding people of recent history and how little Donald Trump actually accomplished as president is just a useful thing to do. And Obama, you see why he is unanimous first ballot Hall of Fame of politics for all time, right? Because you just see what a massive political talent he is.
Yeah, and at the same time, I believe it was 2016, he was doing this, and the strategy of the campaign ended up having a bad outcome. But there's no question, Simone, that former President Barack Obama is able to deliver a message about Trump that doesn't appear to be breaking through in any other way, like actually saying, truthfully, he is lying about this, he is lying to you about this, he is lying about legal migrants, Haitian migrants in Springfield. Sometimes it's frustrating. That'll be an understatement to see that not break through with especially Republicans or just decent human beings who should be able to see the difference between right and wrong. Barack Obama, with joy and with humor, is able to sort of get through to an audience that it's not okay to lie. It's not okay to sell the presidency. It's not okay to be a narcissist and to have the reins of the presidency, and on and on and on. Where, in what swing states, in what counties do you think this message has the potential for really breaking through? Where should he go?
Well, look, I think it is indicative of where he was just last night. And let me back up and say that there was to your point about how there are good Republicans and whatnot, and yes,
decent people.
Very decent people. Like, I don't know how we got to this point that Donald Trump has people believing that just because they don't agree with you ideologically that they are the opposition. Former President Obama, in that speech last night, he has like a 4-minute riff where he's like, I'm not doing this for applause. Like, when did this become okay?
Right.
I tweeted it out last night, and that is he's having a conversation not with Democrats there, right, but with moderate Republicans, independent voters, of which there are some. Okay, there are real independents out there in the country, especially in Arizona, and he is very popular with that demographic as well. Oftentimes, President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama are talked about as, oh, they can rally the base, and yes, that is absolutely true. But they are also very good and still very popular and have very high numbers with some of these more moderate individuals and independent voters. I will say, I think that there's a mixture of, yes, talk to those folks, and you got to do, because it's a turnout election.
Yes,
you got to turn out the base. You got to turn out some people that aren't the base. Okay, the Kamala Coalition is a broad one. I was struck by his conversation with his off-the-record stop that was very much so on the record with black men and men talking to men. Again, I just think the frankness of which President Obama addressed many things yesterday is something Democrats should have been doing for a while. Like, in circles will say, yeah, this was Obama's economy. How is Donald Trump just taking credit for it? But yesterday, you heard Obama say, this was mine. Yeah, I did that.
Right. So, Elise, what's the reasonable argument for Republicans who are supporting Donald Trump at this point, but there's a chance you can, I mean, it's country over party. I want to talk to you about the reasonable Republicans who are perhaps, oh, come on, Liz Cheney. She went over to the other side when she did the January 6th, which she's not. Okay, she's about as Republican as it gets.
Didn't want an insurrection in the Capitol.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I think that's fair, you know. But I mean, to me, it seems you got to be kind of honest about where we are. Okay, Kamala Harris is not going to be the president of your choice. It's not going to be great from your point of view because you're not going to have all the policy agreements that you would have perhaps with a real Republican nominee. But you don't have it in Donald Trump. He's not a Republican. He was a Democrat. He's donated to Kamala Harris. And look what he has done. Take a look at what he has said and take a look at what he has done and ask yourself, how do you rebuild the Republican Party beyond this person? If you can't say out loud, I can't accept this narcissist who lies and hurts people, but inside you're feeling that way, what's the argument to reasonable Republicans that you can do this? You could actually vote for Kamala Harris and actually believe that that is a path to the Republican Party ultimately rebuilding itself, having a chance to unleash itself from the chains of this cult leader.
Right-leaning voters who are considering Kamala Harris need to know that she's not a radical liberal. And I don't think that the Trump campaign has managed to paint her as a radical San Francisco liberal. And that's what they were trying to do from the onset. They haven't had much time and they haven't really been able to do it. And I think that if you're willing to bridge the Democratic-Republican divide, you're worried about Trump's stability, and it comes down to a values argument. Do you trust this person? Is this someone, are these the kind of values that you want your children? The argument that Liz Cheney very eloquently has been stating, and it's, you know, how it goes. This is not about politics. It isn't about ideology anymore. It's about basic American values, and that is how she's going to woo those right-leaning voters.